Welcome to the No Bull Political Arena with your hosts, Sophia Nelson, Bill O'Reilly, Brian Mistro, and TJ McCormick. It's real voices, raw politics, and no bullshit. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the No Bull Political Arena. This is Brian Mistro. I'm here with Bill O'Reilly, Gene Massey, and Rachel Savage. It's good to have you back on again, Rachel. I really appreciate your joining us again. And we're going to start off in just a second to I'm going to introduce you, Rachel and Gene. Give a little bit of your backgrounds for our audience. And you too, Rachel. I know that you've been on before, but in case somebody hasn't seen your previous with us on the show. So I'm going to ask you to give a little bit of your background, and then let's talk about the reason that we're on this. Let's talk about ICE. Let's talk about Minnesota and what happened, and let's get some viewpoints there. So I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Rachel, if that's okay. Give everybody just a brief background of who you are and what you do, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am a former Department of Justice attorney. I left the Department of Justice February of last year, actually almost exactly a year ago. Now I'm in private practice at a firm called Eldridge Crandall in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm an immigration attorney primarily focusing on removal defense, appeals, and some criminal post-conviction work.
Excellent. Yeah. Very knowledgeable too. Gene, do you mind giving everybody a little bit of your background?
Sure. Thanks. I'm Gene Massey. I think I met you in my professional capacity, which is I'm an executive director of Fair Vote Minnesota. We work on electoral reform to create a more resilient democracy, as I've come to call it now, and primarily focused on ranked choice voting. But I think part of my reason to be here today is in my personal capacity as a resident of Minneapolis and experiencing the ICE operations on the ground in real time and being very close to the center of the two murders that happened. Alex Pretti lived around the corner from me, and Renee Good within a mile from me. And so it's been very intense in a neighborhood way to be going through this experience and seeing what it means to be living through these very anti-democratic forces in it's just all very intense. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Sharing what that experience looks like.
I do want to touch on that. I know it's been extremely difficult for the folks in Minnesota. I've had some other friends that have lived up there and have been through this. What have you seen? Is it you hear and read a lot of different things in the news. There's been a lot of different viewpoints, some of them that quite frankly, you wonder if they've even been to a march at all in their lives. I'd like to get your opinion, Gene. Have the protests been peaceful? Are the protesters peaceful? Do you see them? Is it very aggressive when they're getting with ICE? What have you seen from the protest side of it with ICE being there?
Well, I think I'll start with where I've shown up.
Okay.
The morning that Alex Pretti was murdered, we caught the news right away, and we lived very close to the scene of the crime. And we immediately pulled on our coats and boots and went to the crime scene. And, it's very, very, very cold, sub-zero temperatures. But the neighborhoods showed up, the community showed up. And what was strange about that moment was, and this is within an hour of the shooting, and it was clear that he had been murdered, is that ICE and federal agents didn't leave the scene. They came to the scene and they kept coming to the scene. And the community were showing up at the same time to bear witness to what was going on. They didn't leave the scene to let law enforcement investigate the crime. They kept coming so as to defend their actions. And so within an hour, what had happened was they saw the community coming, and they decided on their aggression to come and storm the crowd, storm the community, and tear gas us. Repeatedly, at least 3 times. I have been to innumerable amount of protests and rallies and marches, all peaceful. If there has been any aggression, it's been entirely on the part of the federal agents. I've been to the Whipple Detention Center 2 times. I've seen their aggression happen 2 times. They come into the crowd, they grab people, they take them to the ground, and they just show who has the power. These are unprovoked circumstances.
Now, have you found this is pretty universal of ICE? Is it just a few bad apples, or has it been generally? I mean, what you're describing sounds like a lot of them.
They are trained, like they have their long guns, they have their tear gas, they have their cans, they throw these sprays out into the crowd all the time. This was only a couple of weeks ago. I remember I was on patrol one morning and I got this message that in a nearby, well, where Renee Good was murdered in Powderhorn Park, an observer had just like randomly been sprayed as an observer by an ICE patrol agent just to antagonize him. The antagonizers are entirely, and I'm not just saying this for some political viewpoint, but the aggression is coming on the part of the federal agents without
Rachel, is that so? You deal and talk to a lot of folks that have been arrested by ICE that are in detention. Have you heard similar stories? What have you heard from your side?
I mean, my clients report to me really extreme acts of aggression, completely untethered to any law enforcement purpose on the part of ICE agents. When I go into, it's called the ICE Baltimore Hold Room. It's the detention facility in Maryland. It's not a real detention facility. It's an office building. But when I go there and I see clients, I show up and they are bruised, they are bloody, they don't have bandages, they don't have any kind of medical care. And they report to me that that is a direct result of the way that ICE apprehended them. And I'm not talking about people who flee. I'm not talking about people who resist. I'm talking about people who get 4 unmarked cars, pull up, stop their car, bust a window. It's dark. And it's not just the people that I work with who are, ICE is kind of trying to exert that power over. It's attorneys in the waiting room. I actually on Tuesday got screamed at and cursed at by an ICE agent for asking after 4 hours, when could I see my client? And the point of that seems to me to be limiting access to representation for detained individuals, which obviously implicates a lot of constitutional problems. But yeah, the aggressors in this case, it's not the people that ICE is targeting. It is ICE.
Do you see, and do either of you see any strategy behind it? I mean, I know that that ICE has been very, very provocative and intentionally provocative under Trump, obviously. Are they trying to send a message to would-be immigrants? Like, do you see any purpose in it, or is it just a macho thing as you see it?
I think it's twofold. I think one, yes, it's a show of power. It's a show of aggression. It's look what the executive can do. But I think it's also when you look at who ICE is recruiting right now, people are not getting any training. They are not doing background checks. I've seen multiple reports of individuals who are ICE agents who have domestic violence convictions in their recent history. They're not vetting these people. It's two-pronged. It's a two-pronged issue.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll add that it's intimidating the general public and intimidating those who are bearing witness to the moment. When Bovino was here, thankfully he's gone, but we had Holman in his stead, like, hello, the guy in charge of it all. But Bovino was giving charges. Look, if anyone dare touches like one little bit of you, you go after them. So they were looking for any amount of provocation, but most people were only always there to bear witness, to make sure that they were protecting the neighborhoods and the communities. And again, as I completely share your analysis, Rachel, the aggression is on the part of them. Minneapolis is like nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for how peaceful we have led this resistance. And so we should not be going anywhere down the path of thinking there's some like quid pro quo here, like ICE is responding to any aggression by the community. We have been needing to respond to a very, very serious moment of a police state and a military occupation.
How do we get back to or can we get back to a balance where you actually have a workable enforcement system that's not being unreasonable, that's not specifically trying to light people up, Going after people that Americans clearly don't want to see deported. Like, where do we find that balance? Is that
I don't, I
possible?
mean,
Do either of you see that possibility in the horizon?
I'll just respond to that. I don't think we have a Congress that is acting on behalf of the American people right now and holding the administration accountable for these actions. So if the administration has a plan to act in this way, the only accountability is the community in the streets right now.
Mm, mm,
And I'll add to that a little bit. So, in the past, the reason that there's such a difference between now and the past is because in the past, ICE used to use an enforcement strategy that was based on the dangerousness of the individual to the
Exactly.
community. So they had a score of 0 to 3, 0, no danger, 3, an extreme danger, and they targeted people who were in the upper range of that. And now what you see is the majority of individuals who are being detained and ultimately harmed by the Trump administration have absolutely no criminal history fall into that 0 category. So,
mm.
I mean, and that had its own flaws. But if we got back to a system that was actually based on, who society would consider a danger, that would make more sense.
Brian, I'd like to weigh in. Forgive me, ladies, for being late. Sophia Nelson here. A couple things. One, I like to deal in facts as an attorney myself. So let's talk about how we got to where we are with ICE enforcement. First of all, the President of the United States of America is on a vengeance tour with where they targeted. I want to be crystal clear about this because it's based in fact. Minnesota is not on the border last time I checked, and Minnesota is not a state with this big influx problem of wild immigrants coming across or illegal immigrants coming across from Mexico or wherever else. It is in the middle of the country. It is up here, sitting in the upper Midwest. That's number one. We all know that the states that were targeted for political reasons. I mean, Trump's own people admit this, that they went after Minnesota specifically because of the lie that Haitians were eating cats and dogs, first of all. And then secondarily, the second lie was that they had some big Medicare scam or some big Social Security scam or whatever it was, and that they were gaming the system. Hence, there must have been this big nefarious enterprise of illegals in Minnesota, which is why they came there in the numbers they did. So don't lose the truth. That's number one. Number two, I don't think we should lose the fact that 2 human beings were murdered. 2, Renee Good and Alex Pretti. There is no spinning it. Neither one of them was a threat to the persons of the ICE agents. You can use words in this country. You are allowed under the First Amendment to have an opinion, to speak, to take videos. You're allowed to do those things. That is allowable under our Constitution and our laws. And Renee Good was fleeing under any reasonable circumstance that you look at. She was fleeing. She was executed. 3 shots to her head, dead. And Alex Pretti was just straight up murdered out in the open. So when people talk to me about reasonableness or can we get back to reasonableness, excuse me, thank you. I love you, Bill. But the only person who's unreasonable right now is the President of the United States of America and his minions. It is
But
not
but
the
but there
citizens
should
of this
but there
country.
should have
It
been a
is, I'm
buffer in
talking, I
Minneapolis.
didn't interrupt you when you were
Excuse
talking.
me. Yep. Excuse me.
And it is a problem for me as a citizen of this country to watch this playing out, just like today's tantrum, and we can get into that later. But that's not what we do in this country. We don't target people. We don't go after people because we have differences with them of opinion or of thought or of speech and then go and terrorize their communities. That is not what we do. And these ICE men, and they're mostly men, I haven't seen female agents. I assume there are some.
There are some.
Um, Go watch the videos of people who were going on to the hospital or they were going to get groceries or they were going to pick their kid up and maybe they had health problems. They were dragged out of their cars, thrown on the ground, beat up in some instances, beat the hell out of them, deprived of oxygen if they needed it, deprived of medication, babies sprayed with the pepper spray in the back seat, asleep. What are we doing? So I want to really shut down this notion of can we get back to reasonableness? Reasonableness has never existed in this process yet.
But
So
the
that's
argument
where I'm
from
going to leave it.
yeah, I mean the argument from the Trump side is that these operations have been going on for years. And Minneapolis there was no buffer. There's no police buffer. We've all heard their arguments. There's no police buffer. The mayor pulled them back. The governor pulled them back. So you had a direct confrontation of activists versus very poorly trained ICE agents. And you ended up with this situation. And I'm just saying, can we get back to a point where you get a little bit of a buffer there when operations have to happen?
Yeah,
And
no.
ideally they would be pursuing people with criminal records
Okay,
solely.
so I really need to come in here.
Okay.
That wasn't the scene on the ground here.
Thank you.
One,
was
going
the
after the
one.
worst
Well,
of
you
the
weren't there,
worst
Sophia.
would only be a very
I can look and
small
see.
number
I
of
can see
people.
too.
But
Yeah,
that
you're going to
wasn't-
want to make excuses for Trump like all people always do.
I'm not a Trump supporter. I never voted. I never voted for Trump.
Enough.
I've never voted for Trump.
Well, I don't care if you voted for him. It's about making excuses for him. It's why he's hanging his picture in front of the Department of Justice. If that doesn't tell you everything you
All
need
I'm
to
saying is
know,
people got
then
killed.
you don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
So-
Go ahead, Gene.
Go ahead, Gene. Yep.
Okay, so anyway, what was happening on the ground was that they had to meet quotas and they were taking everyone off the streets, observers and immigrants alike. And they were going into schools. They were dressing up as dads going into schools.
Do
They
what?
were going into
Oh,
restaurants, eating the food, and then taking workers afterwards. They were
Yeah,
in
that's great.
disguise. It was like the whole scene has become like when their aggression tactics, when they were in garb, was bad enough, and then they go in disguise. And it is still happening. And so now the sad truth is, while they may be dissipating a little bit in the main metro area, they're going into greater Minnesota, into rural communities in more force. And that's where we're seeing a pickup in
But
it.
Gene, can I ask you a question? Why Minnesota? Why not Texas? Why not California? Why not Arizona? Why not states that have real New Mexico? I mean,
You said it yourself. I couldn't agree more. It's a vengeance campaign. Most first generation immigrant communities live in southern red states. And that's not where he's conducting his operations. In Minnesota, what he thought he could gain, I don't know, because it completely backfired.
Hmm.
The
I
community
think
has
the
come together
common
like
tie
never
is
before.
Tim Walz ran against Trump. Tim Walz is the governor.
Walz ran against
Very clear
President.
yeah, he says some pretty nasty things about him. He calls him retarded when he has a son with special needs. And again, I think my anger or my upset, Bill, just so you know, and it's I just had enough of the country being put into this situation where every single day it's something else. If it's not citizens being shot to death or shot at on the street, or if it's not tariffs or threatening somebody, or we're going to invade somebody, or
I understand that.
Epstein files, it's every single day.
I understand. I really do.
And then
I truly do.
we should pair all of that reality with new acts to try to rig the midterms. This is all one big puzzle coming together. While they're terrorizing our communities, they're trying to legislate themselves into a fixed election in the midterms.
The thing about Trump that you
hugely
have to, I
consequential for us.
guess, I don't know if you give him points for this or what is, he'll tell you exactly what he's going to do, and he'll say it out loud. I mean, today he literally said, and for those of you watching and haven't seen it, don't believe anything I say, just check it for yourself. He literally said today, I can do whatever I want. I can destroy the United States of America if I want to. He said that.
He said it
Literally
before.
said that at a press conference where he's talking about how low down the Supreme Court is because how dare they do this and that they're a disgrace to their families. Presidents of this country do not speak that way. They have never spoken that way. Richard Nixon is a choir boy compared to what we have going on now. He never talked this way. In his worst moments, he said, I'm not a crook. But that's about as bad as it got from that one. And my point is that when you take into context what you all have experienced there in Minnesota, and I'm deeply sorry about that as a Virginian and somebody watching it from afar, our hearts go out because we don't like what we see. And I'm grateful for our new governor, Abigail Spanberger, who the moment she got in office, she shut the ICE thing down. To your point, Bill, she told law enforcement, you will not cooperate with them, not cooperate, but you're not going to go out of your way to turn over people to them. Whatever. Let them do their job. You do your regular job of what you do as law enforcement, but we're not going to abet and enable this kind of conduct. And you don't see any ICE here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we also shut down the warehouse they wanted to put here. Virginia said not happening here.
Yeah.
So I hope that other states follow that model.
And
So
I don't mean to be insensitive about Minneapolis. My eldest daughter is involved in the demonstration. She's been running people to the hospital on and bringing food on bikes in
Good.
Sub-Zero.
Good for
Thank
her.
her
And,
on
and
my
she's
behalf.
really profoundly upset by what's happened. She's been part of it. And the same thing where the gentleman was shot. We ate at that Vietnamese sandwich place right down the street, a few weeks before. So I do feel it. And maybe I'm naive, but I just hope for, like Rachel and Jean, can we get back to a point where we focus on truly dangerous people, and where Congress begins to act, and where we come up finally with some legislation? Mike Law, a Republican, you may not like Mike or be on the side with him, but he had a New York Times piece after this saying enough is enough. Now we have to legislate together. We've got to get some kind of agreement.
So let's focus on Mike Law. He is sponsoring legislation to ban electoral reform that can get us back to a place that you might want to imagine us being, which is
Yeah, I work with, I was a spokesman in his race, so
so
okay.
I just I don't think that there is a level of seriousness in
Well, it's double-minded is what it is. And for those Christian, nationalists watching, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. I think I read that somewhere in the scriptures in the book of Romans, right? So my point is that, if you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, that's the problem. I think the bill's right that obviously we want immigration enforcement. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't want that to happen.
Right.
But two Americans, two white people, let me just call it what it is. They weren't illegal aliens. They weren't illegals. They're two white people. They weren't even of color, and they got murdered in broad daylight. That's what scared
So
me.
I want to throw something out, and it's a question. Especially with the two killings, how is local law enforcement working with ICE? And again, I'm giving you a talking point of things that I hear. Okay, so there's no hidden agenda with my question. Is local, so let's say that ICE wants to go in, from your perspective, Gene or Rachel. ICE wants to go in, they found somebody that's a rapist, or let's call it whatever it is. So this is somebody that's a bad hombre. They want to deport them. Do they work with the local police departments to prepare for that and go in there and take them, or do they go in there and conduct their operation and then leave it for the local law enforcement to clean up the mess? What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I can speak to 287G agreements if that's what you mean. The
Yeah,
cooperation.
I do. So explain for the audience what 287G is. I know what it is, but if you could.
Yeah, a 287G agreement means that local police departments will, if they find out an individual is a non-citizen or otherwise lacks status, they will relay that to ICE affirmatively. Okay, so when you end a 287G agreement, what you're doing is you're stopping the affirmative act on the part of the local law enforcement. That said, as Sophia mentioned, ICE can still do its job in every way. It can
Right.
still independently discover if someone is a non-citizen, and it can still independently discover if that person has a criminal record. So 287G agreements, while they are problematic, the status quo still allows ICE to find and target people, albeit people who are in criminal proceedings. But some people in criminal proceedings, I've had a woman who she got a charge for stealing diapers and baby formula from the store. It was $16. $16. And ICE picked her up for that because it's a shoplifting offense. So large issues at play.
Rachel, what are the facilities like? I'm curious. I've heard descriptions that are pretty harrowing, and I think we all need to hear about that.
Definitely. So here in Baltimore, in the hold room, there are about 80 people in a room, maybe double the size of mine. There are not enough beds for people. There is one toilet for those 80 people to share. Oftentimes it is broken. I don't know if you saw the reporting from down here about the whistleblower who informed about seeing people laying in feces. There's no sanitary products for menstrual cycles. Oh, and people get 24 ounces of water a day. They get 3 8-ounce bottles of water per day. So that's that side of things, but then you also have things like soft-sided detention facilities. Look at East El Paso Camp, Montana. That is a tent camp. That is a tent camp in the middle of the desert where we are keeping people for extended periods of time. It could be months at a time that they're in literal tents in the desert. So the way that we're treating these individuals, and even just like converting warehouses like you see on the news all the time, those are not meant to be detention centers.
Right.
What's happening is it's very jarring, to say the least.
Jane, so are you familiar? Do you guys, first of all, do you have a ICE detention facility in Minnesota? I don't. You may not be able to answer this. I don't know if you
I
do you
can
know what the
give a bit of
conditions
a
are?
perspective, but I really appreciate what Rachel is saying. So we have what's now pretty renowned as the Whipple Detention Center. And our Congress people have been trying to get access to this to understand the conditions inside. And once they were in, they were like horrified, just as you just explained. Like, there's nowhere good in these detention centers, and they're building them with now billions of dollars around the country. There's a lot of question marks about why and how and where all of that money's going. But I want to draw attention back to the idea of who ICE is targeting, because it really is unfair. Again, it's driven by quotas, not by criminal activity. And so ICE agents, federal agents, are going into homes and arresting people without judicial warrants. So there's no due
That's
process
crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
whatsoever. So if you're going to identify someone with some amount of criminal activity, it's a thing called due process, and there's just none of that.
Let
right
me,
now.
Jean, let me tell you something that I know for a fact, because a very good friend of mine who is an attorney in one of the southern states, I won't say where, got a call maybe a month ago. She and her husband are donors to the Trump administration, whatever. And they asked her, would she consider being appointed to what Trump is putting together as a force of what they're calling administrative law judges out of DOJ that would oversee this ICE and give them these not real warrants, because they
But
wouldn't be
administrative
judicial.
warrants.
They give them administrative warrants. And, she called me up and she said, what do you think about this? And I lost it. And I was like, you can't go anywhere near that. I'm like, first of all, it's unconstitutional. An administrative law judge has a very clear function.
Yeah.
But issuing warrants is not one of them, because it's a way to skirt the judicial process, right? So that's the first thing I wanted to say. And then back kind of to Rachel, I have a question for you. What is the difference between, how does ICE determine whether or not someone gets sent away immediately, as they've done to that girl who was coming home from college break or whatever, and they took the 2-month-old sick baby and sent it to Mexico? How do they decide who they're shipping right away and who they're detaining? What's the difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. So short answer, they're detaining everyone and then figuring out the rest later. So the policy is mass detention. People who have what's called a final order of removal from an immigration judge are lawfully allowed to be removed from the United States. What we're seeing is that people are being removed from the United States without a final order of removal from an immigration judge. I have had 9 clients just since I started in private practice a year ago. I have had 9 clients who have been unlawfully deported without a final order of removal, sometimes without even a pending order of removal, and sometimes in direct violation of a binding stay of removal issued by an immigration judge. The technicalities of the system, the processes that we had in place in the past that you could argue functioned, those are eroded now entirely, because it is an act first, investigate later kind of atmosphere.
So I've
And
asked
then
you
once
this
they got
before.
it-
Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead, Bill.
go ahead.
No,
You
no,
go,
I was
go
just going
ahead.
to ask. So, Rachel, I've asked you this before, but and you just alluded to this. Is this something new with the Trump administration, or has this been a policy through Biden, Trump 1.0, Obama? Is this something new that you've seen with the new Trump administration?
Absolutely new with the Trump administration. I've been practicing for 4 years, so I don't have that many years under my belt, but my senior partner at my firm has been practicing for 20 years. Never at any point in his 20 years of being an immigration lawyer did he ever have a client deported in violation of a stay or without a final order of removal. I personally have had 9. I don't even know.
Process.
There's no due process.
There's not
And
due
I
process.
was talking to my husband about this, and I was like, instead of the civil rights era, this is the civil wrongs era. That's what this is going to go down in history, because it's just such a blatant disregard of the constitutional protections that we now have worked so
Well,
hard
Rachel, I would say that was a great analogy and a pushback because I'm a lot older than you. But the civil rights era is actually a really good parallel to what you're seeing now, because if you go back to Jim Crow, Black people were given the right to vote with the 15th Amendment. Black men were anyway. Black women with the 19th Amendment, of course, when women got the right to vote. But they weren't able to exercise that vote without the hindrances of poll taxes and literary tests and literacy tests and all these things that were burdens put in front of them and barriers to rob them of their due process constitutional rights to vote, to participate in the process. And it took legislation, took almost 100 years from 1865 to 1965 to fix that. So my point in bringing this up is this isn't the first time we've been down this road. This just is a little bit different because this time we're actually sending people out without the fair hearing and the fair process or the right of law to do certain things that they would be allowed to do. And so I think that history kind of repeats itself, unfortunately, when we don't deal with it right the first time. And so I'm glad you explained it, because I think a lot of us were confused about, well, why does somebody get detained for 5 months versus somebody else who just gets sent right away? So I think that's an important point.
Bill,
What's the feel on the street now? What's the feel? Is it?
I
Go
just
ahead, I'm
want
sorry.
to add a description of what some of that looks like on the ground. When people get picked up randomly without any due process, and they discover, oh, we made a mistake after all, which is most detainees, most.
Hmm.
They literally like send them out of the detention center late at night with no clothing. They
Nothing.
take their identification or rip it up or cut it up. So now they don't have their papers anymore. They drop them off in random parks. So we have mutual aid networks are now at the Whipple Detention Center waiting for people to be literally thrown out of the detention center, dropped off at parks randomly with no clothes in sub-zero weather.
Specifically to be mean? Is that the idea? To be cruel?
Well, I think they have no plan, they have no action. They're detaining people without reason. And then they would discover, well, oh, I guess that was a mistake. And then they like throw them out the
Throw
door.
them out.
I think
Yeah.
what
Rachel, are you seeing that? Rachel, have you seen the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. When someone's detained in Maryland, they're shipped within, a couple days somewhere across the country, let's say Aurora, let's say Adelanto. And if in the good old days we could win a bond for that person, ICE literally just pushes them out of the detention center. You have to find your own way home. You don't have exactly like Jean said, you don't have your wallet, you don't have your ID, you don't have your phone, you don't have money, you don't have any way to get back. Your family has to find a way to get you a bus ticket because you don't have an ID to fly home. So then you take a 72-hour bus all at your own expense, even though ICE is the only reason you're halfway across the country.
And this goes full circle back to where I began. At some point, we're going to have a serious conversation in this country about who we are and where we are. And you have to ask yourself, is this the United States of America? And is this what we do to people? Is this human, how we're treating people? And for what reason on earth, if you want to detain somebody and you find out that you shouldn't have detained them, why on earth would you then push them out with no resources, no ability to contact someone, no proper clothing, anything? I mean, that's just cruel and unusual punishment. And I know that applies to the context of sentencing and trials and what we do to people thereafter. But that really applies here, because if you're going to detain people and deprive them of their rights, their life, liberty, and happiness and their due process, then there's got to be a good reason for that. And to your question of whether or not it's to be mean, I think that's probably the first conclusion most people will draw. Like, it's just nastiness, it's just hateful. But I think it runs a little bit deeper, right? Because when we other people, those nasty immigrants, those dangerous, we have an ad running here in Virginia that's been running for a while now by one of the pro-Trump PACs that talks about they want you to forget all the women that the illegals rape. They want you to forget all the crime. And when you look at the data put out by the United States Department of Justice, Trump's Department of Justice, the data tells you that there are very few illegal immigrants that come into this country or people under a green card or whatever you want to do and that are committing violent crime. That number is minuscule compared to the number of white people, black people, and other people that commit crimes every day in unbelievable numbers. The facts don't lie. So again,
And meanwhile, our communities are being decimated with community members, students,
Yep.
workers. Like, if America's not about newcomers into our
yeah,
nation,
what are we about?
we
Agree there.
cannot
Yep.
function
Texas
economically,
is shutting
politically,
down a
anything
number
to be
of
about.
Texas has to shut down a number of like their farms, because of migrant workers. They won't come to work. And I don't blame them. They're afraid that they're going to go show
Of
up to
course.
work and they're going to get jumped and they're going to get
Yep.
moved out. It's really having a bad impact on farming and labor and other things. It's devastating, actually.
Devastating.
So
There's got to be a better way.
we're gonna wrap this up. We will put up, as everybody be able to see, the actual statistics of the number of people that are detained that have committed crimes or have not committed crimes and have committed violent crimes. You'll be able to watch that here in just a moment. And I just want to finish up and say, wow, it's been one hell of an eye opener. Shocking, frankly. Real quick, last words, Bill, as we wrap this up. I mean, this is
I just wanted to thank you for coming on. And we don't get anywhere if we don't listen to one another. And I appreciate what I learned from you tonight. And that's
100%.
very important. So thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely. Sophia, anything you want to add?
No, I think these ladies, thank you for what you do, Rachel. It's not an easy job to have right now as an attorney in that field. I hung up my legal cleats a long time ago. And Jean, you're on the ground there. And like I said, know that we're watching from all over and our hearts hurt. And I think our new governor is trying to learn from what you all have experienced, and I think others are, and try to avoid that type of conflict and death and drama. So thank you both for what you do, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you. And Rachel, thanks for coming on again. And Jean, Rachel, do you have any last comments that you'd want to put out for somebody to hear?
Just one thing. Since January 1st, 2026, 8 people have died in ICE custody.
Oh my God.
Not just Renee.
Sorry, ended on a bummer. Didn't.
No, this is what we need to hear. This needs to be heard.
And if I
Rachel,
could
did
say-
you see the piece in, I think it was the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, where they had the kids that had written letters?
Oh.
And the kids that were writing, and they had a compilation of the letters that children were writing back to somebody at home or whatever, and talking about, just how horrible it was, school age children. It was very heart-wrenching that children are in detention. I don't understand that for the life of me. They haven't committed any crimes. I don't understand.
No, 16-year-old detained for 4 weeks out in Colorado. She was driving on her learner's permit and went to pay the ticket and got essentially disappeared. So
By herself.
I'm full of good stories today.
And
Jane,
the bad thing is when women and girls get into these detention situations, there are any number of cases of rape and abuse. I mean, you're talking about a really vile system here. And I think Bill's point is correct. I take umbrage with the fact of why we're in this place that we're in, but he's right that there's got to be a better way forward than this. Like, there has to be a legislative, bipartisan way to address this issue and do so in a humane way. Like, I'm just concerned about, like I said, our loss of humanity every day gets worse and worse and worse, and I don't like it. It's just not good.
mhm.
In an American way. Yeah,
for sure. Jane, we'll wrap up with you. Any last thoughts you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I'm just, I think Minnesota is providing the blueprint for how we resist this moment. And I'm happy that in Virginia and other places that people are learning from what we have been able to do in here in Minnesota. And we will be by everyone's side as other communities, cities, states face this new reality of the militarization of our communities. It's really bad.
Well, like I said, this was eye-opening. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Rachel and Jean. For those that are watching, please make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can see it right there. It's at No Bull Media Group. Again, it's on YouTube at No Bull Media Group. If you've got some questions, especially after this, ask them. Obviously, we answer those questions on air. And yeah, what an incredible show today. It's quite eye-opening. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you again, Rachel and Jean and Bill and Sophia. Thanks for everybody hopping on, and yeah, we'll see where we go from here. Thanks
Thank you.
everyone. The No Bull Political Arena is on all major social media platforms. Make sure to give us and your host a follow.
Hey everybody, this is Sophia Nelson. Follow me at I am Sophia Nelson on every one of my social media platforms.
I'm Bill O'Reilly, and you can reach me at Twitter at WFBOR.
Hey, this is TJ. Follow me on X or Twitter at TJ McCormack.
This is Brian Mistro, and you can follow me on X at Brian_Mistro or follow along on Facebook at Brian.Mistro.
A No Bull Media Group member.